The window, which is still there today, is called the Epiphany window because it represents the three wise men. And I think a bit earlier somebody else was talking about the three wise men, which is quite strange. The three wise men bringing their gifts to the baby Jesus. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And in addition to supposedly having clues in that window, he also had a family Bible in which he drew out at one of the front pages a series of strange numbers. And I haven't got this on there, but this isn't it. I haven't actually got a photograph of that Bible because it wouldn't come out for this. And we had to do this really quickly. But just to show you the sort of thing, it wasn't drawn as good as this, obviously, on a computer, but it was a square with these numbers, 10, 11, 12, 11, 12, 13, 12, 13, 14. The words at the top, first, last, song, and also the numbers above it, 2, 21, and 5. Somehow we eventually worked out, it'll take forever to basically explain how we did all this, but we kind of figured out that that window, plus this particular cipher at the beginning of his family Bible, together were his clues as to where he hid these stones. And we thought, well, why not go looking for them? And myself and those two people who were in that picture just now, Graham and Jody, went searching for them. Graham actually is quite a famous man. If you've ever heard of a band called Air Supply, quite big in the 1980s. They did a song called All Out of Love, So Lost Without You. Well, that's him. He's a singer-songwriter from that. And his wife, Jody, who I became friends with a number of years ago when I worked on a stage musical in America about Robin Hood. That's another story. And they were quite keen to go searching for these stones too. Now, before I tell you about how we searched for them and what happened, you may wish to know why I would want to go searching for these things in the first place. Well, I'd done quite a lot of research into these stones because I'd written a book, which was published last year, or earlier this year, called The Moses Legacy, which is basically about the search for the mountain of God, the place where Moses received the Ten Commandments and God first communicated with the ancient Israelites. Now, the interesting thing is this. Somehow, now most of us now think of God as being, according to the Christian way of looking at it, as being an invisible, omnipresent being. But the ancient Israelites seem to have figured that he actually could occupy a certain space and time and make a commune with God. They speak in the Old Testament many times about something called the glory of the Lord. Now, the glory of the Lord, it doesn't actually say what it is, but for example, the first time that the ancient Israelites go to the mountain of God, where God is thought to reside, they see the glory of the Lord descend upon Mount Sinai. Now, around it is happening a storm. Thunder and lightning, rain is coming down. They are sore afraid. How can you be sore afraid? Sorry. They are sore afraid. And the glory of the Lord descends upon Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. But it doesn't just appear upon the mountain. When they make the Ark of the Covenant, somehow, when they are traveling in the desert, the glory of the Lord appears above the Ark itself. There's a thing on top of it called the mercy seat. It's difficult to tell exactly what the mercy seat is. It's something to do with the lid of the box. Some people think it's an incense burner. Nobody quite knows. But above this mercy seat, the glory of the Lord appears within the smoke, presumably from an incense burner. On many occasions, the glory of the Lord appears unto the ancient Israelites, normally when they're at the mountain of God. And it does some strange things. People are healed in its presence. Sometimes fire comes from it. On one occasion in the Old Testament, we are told that fire came out from the glory of the Lord and consumed the offerings that were upon the offerings table, the shewbread table. In other words, they'd put offerings there for the Lord and suddenly boom, they get zapped with something that seemingly comes out of the glory of the Lord. Another occasion, the Ammonites, they're kind of creatures that swim in the sea, aren't they? The something-anites, anyway, something. Amorite. Anyway, these enemies of the Israelites turn up. Amorites, that's it, yeah, not creepy crawly things on the bottom of the sea. Amorites are opposing the Israelites, the two armies are together, and suddenly the glory of the Lord appears, seemingly above the Ark of the Covenant. We're not told exactly how. And somehow it zaps a chariot. So this guy who's obviously leading these guys is on his chariot, and the chariot gets blown apart from something that comes out of the glory of the Lord. So it heals, it zaps, and on other occasions it gives spiritual enlightenment. The glory of the Lord appears, and suddenly not only Moses but his successors, Joshua and others, are able to commune and speak with God. Sometimes it says that the glory of the Lord was like fire, but fire that would not consume. So it's fire-like. It's some sort of fiery type thing that appears and weird things happen around it. There's a guy I met a few years ago who is a professor who works at Fermilab, which I believe is in Switzerland. Stop me if I'm wrong, it might be in Austria or somewhere, I don't know. But it's one of these atomic accelerators, and this guy is some nuclear physicist. And he said he had a theory that the reason that the mountain of God was important is it has a certain rock structure, and fault lines are there and whatever, that create this unusual electromagnetic phenomenon, which some people today describe as earth lights. Strange lights that come out of the ground just before earth tremors that can be seen in certain types of rock strata. Strange balls of light, like ball lightning, that people claim to see in various areas that some people actually think are behind what UFOs are. A friend of mine, Paul Devereux, wrote a book called Earth Lights, examining this whole thing about whether certain places in the earth have these strange ball lightning type things which are caused by natural phenomena. But they do happen to behave in a strange way. Sometimes these lights are seen and they don't just sort of appear there like ball lightning and shoot off. They seem to almost behave intelligently. They move towards people, they move away, they hover. They've even been seen to go through windows. Sometimes they explode, causing terrible damage. People sometimes in their presence claim to feel elated. He said he believed that the mountain of God was a place like this, and the reason the ancient Israelites went to this place is because the area had become considered holy because these strange lights had been seen there, and they began to work, and the Lord came upon him, and he spoke in tongues! No, he didn't. And that they went to this place because it had become known as holy, thought of as holy, because strange activity had taken place there. And he also said it's strange that they had this oh, it doesn't matter. They don't have to go back to it. No, keep that, sorry. They had this breastplate that supposedly had these different stones in it, set in a particular order. And he said it's quite possible that they may have stumbled upon something that, because they wore these particular stones, these stones in this particular order, these type of stones taken to where this electromagnetic phenomena would happen, would give them the power to control it. Because if it is this kind of ball lightning, electromagnetic, earth-like phenomena, which was behind what was going on at the mountain of God, it can zap, it can heal, it can enlighten. If it can control it and make it happen at will, that's a pretty useful thing to have. And he wasn't saying he believed this, but he said, that's an interesting thing that I thought about one time. And he said, it is possible. Now, the interesting thing, I now come back to the Bersendassett Hills, where Crove Jones claims to have found 3 of the stones from the breastplate, and the other 9 are presumably still hidden. This area around this church and this Templar's Chapel, that area is the most intense area of earth-like type phenomena in all of England. For years on the Bersendassett Hills, there have been claims of people seeing strange balls of light hovering over the hillsides. Sometimes they are blue, crackly balls of light. Other times they are green, soft. Other times they are almost like a column of light that seems to sort of glide normally over lakes or rivers. In fact, the locals have even given it a name. They call the blue or white column of light Jenny Moonshine, according to somebody who told me that the other day. I didn't even know it was called that, but apparently the locals call it Jenny Moonshine. There's a red ball of light which is seen on many, many occasions in the area, particularly over, again, lakes, areas of water, or high on the hillsides. A crimson glowing ball of light which has been described as the Eye of Herne, presumably Herne the Hunter from the Saxon mythology. And these lights have been seen there for years. I'll give you a few examples of people I personally interviewed that have seen these lights. Outside the local church, the vicar and his wife, by that holy well I've just shown you on that picture, is one area where this blue light is seen. The vicar and his wife were leaving the rectory one night opposite the church, walking down the lane, and suddenly, from the well, this blue light appeared, this globe of light about the size of a football, hovered right in front of them, came very, very close to them, started crackling like this, and they were sort of like moving away. It came towards them and then moved back again, and they said it almost seemed to be watching them. It seemed to have some sort of intelligence behind it. That was their words. And suddenly, as it got to where the gates are, a crack of light, like an arcing bolt of lightning, came from this globe and set fire to the gatepost. And then the whole thing went zoom and disappeared. Doesn't that sound a lot like the glory of the Lord that appeared above the ark that then consumed the offerings on the altar table? Another example of somebody I interviewed who saw one of these lights in the Burton Dasset Hills. This guy didn't see it, but he told me about, there used to be a windmill stood on top of the Burton Dasset Hills that on many occasions people claim to have seen these strange lights there. In 1930, the miller was just about to go to bed with his wife, presumably, and suddenly this ball of light appeared outside the window, hit the sails of the windmill, blasted the sails apart, set the place alight, and he only just managed to escape with his life. Isn't that similar to the chariot of the Amorites being destroyed by this thing zapping from the glory of the Lord? Remember the story in the Bible about the glory of the Lord healing people? One particular person, there's this lake close to the Burton Dasset Hills, which is known as the Lady of the Lake, because there's a local story about the ghost of the Lady of the Lake is seen to glide, a white lady is seen to glide over the lake. Perhaps another of these earth lights. There's a place called Farnborough Hall, which is right next to it, a stately home, and one of the people who works as a groundsman there was walking his dog along a footpath that goes beside the lake, and suddenly across, and there's an island in the middle of the lake, saw this red light, this glowing globe of red light that came towards him, crackling away as it did so. And he said it was like, the noise he heard was like intermittent kind of, he said it was like two stones being banged together intermittently. It came towards him. He was scared at first. His dog just stared at this thing and stopped dead still. And then he suddenly felt this well-being, this tingling feeling all over him. And the light just vanished. He said until that day he was suffering quite seriously from arthritis in his wrists. Within a week it had gone. And when I interviewed him, which is about a couple of years later, he said he'd never had the pain again. Like the healing coming from the glory of the Lord. And the last example I'll give of these, before I explain what happened next, is really quite interesting. A local teacher from the area was on his motorbike driving past late one night in the dark, driving past that Templars chapel, that old ruined barn. And right opposite there, there's a pool about the size of this room. And as he drove past, the engine suddenly started cutting out. Typical UFO phenomenon. Engine cut out. Stopped right outside that chapel. Local people say the chapel's haunted. He was a bit superstitious. He didn't like to be outside his chapel on his own at that time of night. Suddenly, he noticed a glow in the darkness. He looked across to where this pool was, and there was this bush there, hiding part of the pool. And the bush was glowing red, and he thought it was burning. He thought the thing was on fire. And he heard this whispering sound that seemed to be coming from it. And he thought it was like somebody trying to speak to him, but he couldn't quite gather what it was saying. But it was like a whispering sound.